way of the spiritual path. Everything has its way. Babies have their own way. Clocks have their way. Time has a way of just ticking on whether we like it or not.
Yep.
Yes. So this is understanding the way of the spiritual path and the way of things. Today's show, we're talking about cooperating with intuition. Get it? Cooperating with.
Aren't you clever?
So I'm your host, Ursula Lentini, and my services are internal family systems, where we talk to parts of us in the subconscious. We operate in the conscious all day long, but actually our behavior and attitude, reactions to life are all in the subconscious. So if we're not behaving in a way that we like, the answers are in the subconscious. The questions are in the mind. The answers are in the heart and the subconscious. This is my guest, Tonya Harvey, and she is a top sales producer. She helps people in their sales world. Can you describe your services?
Sure. One of the things that I have developed is a sales training to specifically help women. It can help men as well. Work on the principles of selling, and they are timing, skill set, and intuition. And it takes each of those for you to have a successful company.
Whoa. A very different approach to something that we all have to do.
Yeah.
So back to our topic of the cooperating with intuition. So I know you very well. I think I know you very well. And I see you working with your intuition strongly. Even though you're a business person, you've had a background in Army, you've served in the military for 6 years. You were raised as an Army brat, as they call them. I'm sure you weren't a brat, though.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I was a perfect little child.
And then living in the corporate world quite a bit as well. But I know you as a spiritual person, and this is our spiritual show.
It is.
So we're bringing that side out in you today.
Great. Perfect.
So I was wondering if you could explain how you and your intuition work by using our lovely friend Barbie and her intuition. How does the conversation go?
So before I start my rendition of Tonya and Tonya's intuition, kind of like that commercial, the Steve and Steve's budget, it's kind of the same idea because they're sort of doing a visual for this. It's interesting that having such a big military background, one of the difficulties that I had was really listening to my intuition. Now, if you go into a military situation and you talk about intuition, you're going to hit a stone wall quickly.
Yeah, that's right? Not calculatable.
No, right. What is ironic about that is intuition is absolutely central to military operations, particularly when you're in combat situations. Now, I was never in a combat situation, but in some of the practices that you train for combat are simulations, and so you are relying on your intuition. Now, typically it's called gut response or gut feeling or gut intuition or gut instinct. And ironically, and you tell me if I have misunderstood, but a lot of the Eastern traditions understand that the mind is actually in the gut.
Yes, yeah, and they're even understanding that the mind and the stomach are related as well.
Oh, okay.
So, but there's intuition and there's gut. So in my reality and my education and understanding, our gut is more of our animal instinct, like yes or no, run, stay.
Right.
Real
freeze,
basic. Yeah,
freeze.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
Freeze, flight, our fight or flight is our gut.
Okay.
And people, and I point to my belly here because people feel that sensation. So people who are more sensitive to their emotions and their physical responses to environmental situations, they'll feel something in their gut, like a little.
Yeah, it's a tightening for me.
Right. So our intuition is more up here in the upper chakras, and it'll be more like, don't go that way, or don't trust this fella, or, move forward in this idea. But one of our principles in the show today is we do not perceive what's best for us.
No.
And that was brought up in the Course in Miracles, I believe.
It is. It's a lesson in the back of the book. If you have any knowledge or interest in it, the book is split up in 2 sections, and one is for a student. And there is an actual lesson that says you do not perceive what is in your best interest.
Oh, that's it. Okay, you do not perceive what is in your best interest. Excellent.
Right. And so that was really, when I was going through the Course in Miracles, that really hit me. I thought, what do you mean? Like, part of me is thinking, well, what do you mean I don't know what's in my best interest?
That's the questioner. Then she goes
Right.
like this.
Okay, so it's actually this part of me that's
Right.
going, what do you mean I
Right.
don't know what's in my best interest?
Right. I don't get that.
And so this one, which is our intuition, kind of steps up, it's sort of that subtle, they call it the quiet voice, right? When all the mind chatter dies down and says, you do know, you do have the solution, you do have the answer. And like you said earlier, it could be move in this direction. I've had situations that I have been, so when I was a chaplain, this is a fascinating story, and I believe this is very much the intuition that you're talking about. This would be the sort of the Buddha energy. So here I am in a local Atlanta trauma center. It was rated and classified for the worst of the worst. And as a chaplain, you're in very intense situations where someone is died and the family is being informed. And the doctor is the one that actually legally needs to make that announcement. And I was there as a support mechanism to the doctor. So the doctor's responsible for the physicality.
Here's the doctor.
Okay, so the doctor's responsible for the physicality of it, and I'm here with the spiritual component. So physical authority, spiritual authority, backed by intuition.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
All right. And so what we have here is a family member who's just been notified in the scenario, and this family member was extremely upset, and we were in a narrow corridor. So if you imagine he's here and the doctor is here, and the announcement's being made.
Here's the doctor.
Oh, sorry, doctor. Wrong character.
This is the questioner.
Right.
And I'm sure the family member was
member,
like, what?
Whoa, right, exactly. What do you mean? And so there's shock, and there's all kinds of an emotional stir.
Okay, so they were loaded up over
So they're,
here.
loaded with all kinds of egoic thoughts about how could this happen? Why I need answers. I must know, those kinds of things. And so as that's building, anger is the prominent motion, and I'm standing here in a narrow corridor, so I'm like between him and the wall.
There's anger.
Oh, there's anger.
With
right.
his mouth open.
Right, exactly. And that was
coming right at the doctor.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the doctor's doing what he can to make the announcement. And so this person here was so wound up, he had a cell phone. And I remember what felt like a force. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm standing in the way. There's only one way out of this corridor, and I'm in the way. And I just felt this push. And I took a step back like this, and his phone went flying past my head and smashed against the wall. And it was only my intuition that could have told me what was about to occur. And so I just gently stepped back and out of the way as he threw his phone, or I would have gotten hit. Mm-hmm. So being open to intuition was really important to me in that moment. I couldn't have, with my mind, known what was coming.
So your intuition saved a day. You could have really gotten clobbered by that cell phone.
I could have.
How did you feel?
I felt relieved that I was able to be moved out of the situation in a way that only intuition could have done.
I bet you there's so many stories around intuition and listening to our intuition and being like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, particularly around safety issues.
Yeah.
Which is so primal for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a great story. Okay, so let's look at another idea here.
All right.
All right, let's talk about the mind. Well, we won't need Ken.
All right.
We won't
so
need him
we're
right
gonna
now.
move him out.
We're just going to talk about, let me get rid of these guys.
Okay.
Well, this one we'll need.
All right.
There's always a discussion, especially in the work I do. So I have to, when we're trying to go into the subconscious, the mind always wants to come in and control the issue.
Exactly.
They want to control the conversation. They want to be in charge of everything.
Because then there's safety in knowing what the outcome is.
Right.
Because you're in control.
So the mind doesn't like the intuition.
No.
Doesn't trust the intuition, because the mind will start saying, well, no, I'm in charge around here, and I am going to do the things that make sense. And then the intuition will say something, and the questioner will go, I don't know if that's really right. I don't know about that.
I like the bobble part. I just really don't know.
That's how it is.
I'm not really sure about that.
That's right.
You did that really well.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm very familiar.
Okay,
with the
so was
questioner.
I. That's why I appreciated it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But once we name and label and understand the questioner, that the questioner is really a protector for the mind.
Oh, okay.
Because the
That
mind's
makes
like,
sense.
hey, wants to fight. But the questioner will
it's
just
like,
be the reasonable one and
All
say,
is well.
and things don't make
Life
sense.
is good.
Like
Yeah.
we were talking about the perception,
Yes.
our quote around the
Because perception is inaccurate.
yes,
It doesn't encompass all of reality. It's available.
that's true. So the mind will say, listen, I'm in control here, and intuition, you don't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's the internal push-pull that I've experienced on a number of occasions where I was, for instance, when I was doing a lot of work after after one of the hurricanes had hit with FEMA, I was trying to get into the office that morning and I was running late. I had taken a little too long with my hair and makeup and it needed to get down the road. And I had a particular pattern. Now, see, isn't this interesting? We have patterns we like to stay to, which I assume is a function of the mind, right? I've always taken this route every day from the hotel to the train station. And so my mind is saying, that's what we do, right? And we're going to go that way. And intuition stepped in and said, why don't you go left and down another route? And I remember distinctly.
Watch.
Yeah, right. Huh? That was, yeah. So the intuition stepped in and said, that's, go another direction. And so then I went, are you kidding me? Really? Right? And so I decided in the moment to sort of say, yeah, thank you. And I listened to I said, okay, intuition. And I said, all right, mind, settle. Let's just see what this is about. It makes no sense.
Right. So the
Right.
mind's like, I'm out. If this thing doesn't make any sense.
And you're going to stick with it.
Don't count on me.
Don't.
I'll back you up when you're ready. But I've learned, because on the spiritual path,
Right.
on the way of the spiritual path, the mind eventually, because the mind loves truth. The mind loves facts. The mind loves something that's provable. So when the trust comes in from the intuition after a while and wins, like the cell phone, for instance, that you didn't get clobbered with.
Right.
So the mind is like, oh, point. This intuition's not so bad after all. When Barbie or whoever the person is makes the call to say, I'm going with intuition, mind becomes obedient and says, all right, I got this. Because there's an understanding that we're all working together for the greater good. Not only the greater good for ourselves, but the greater good for everybody we're interacting with. So the mind and the questioner can obediently be on call if needed. And we're following the intuition.
Right.
Which gives everything a lot of peace. Because this, all day long, is not
It's
fun.
tiring.
Oh my God, it's exhausting.
It's a lot of energy and spin
Yeah.
that really doesn't propel us anywhere.
So when we move into surrender around listening to our intuition, there's a calmness here. So the mind versus intuition fight is not going on.
Right.
Okay, so here you are walking down the street.
So I decided
A different way.
to pivot left and go a different direction. And
Okay.
I'm literally walking going, I don't get this. This makes no sense to me. Why am I doing this? I'm literally asking myself these questions as my feet are moving me forward down a different path.
So she's still hanging out
Yeah,
here going,
yeah.
what are we doing? This doesn't make any sense.
It does.
That's not how the mind works.
Right,
Okay.
right. Why are we going this way? What's wrong with the other way? That kind of thing. So what's interesting is there's a point at which you can very clearly see the train. And so I see the train. And if my objective was to make it to work on time, then I want to catch that train that I just saw. And so I took off running to cross the street, and a cop came up.
There he is.
Our cop
There's our cop.
comes up and says, "Stop." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Ma'am, will you step over here?" And I go, I say in my head, and it's embarrassing. I mean, there's a crowd of people, and I have a cop that stands and says to me, "Ma'am, can you step over here?" And so I step over here, and there's this exchange with the police officer.
With your embarrassment.
Right. It immediately triggers us back into our childhood where we have this moment of, oh my God, I've done something wrong. I'm being scolded by an authority figure. And so, and I have witnesses for it.
Here's the scolding with the embarrassment.
Right.
I'm being scolded and I'm embarrassed. And don't forget, you're not hitting the train either.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The train that I was running for was going, bye. Right. And so, and these people are walking past me, looking at me with these odd looks. Like, what is going on? Why has this officer stopped you? You're not, it's something we're used to in a car, but not when we're walking. And he, so.
Well, don't put your backs to him.
So,
our people out there
sorry,
listening.
yes. Wait.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so.
Yeah, there we go. Here's all the people
So
watching.
here's a moment where I'm dealing with a lot of emotional stuff.
Sure.
I have listened to Buddha, my intuition, and now in front of this officer, I'm feeling angry
Okay.
because I don't understand, my mind doesn't understand why Buddha has directed me literally into the arm of an officer.
Right.
So we have this exchange. He says, ma'am, do you know what the date is? And I said, yes, it's whatever the date was. And he says, do you know what this week is? And I'm thinking, is this a trick question?
Am I on candid camera?
Am I? Right, exactly.
candid camera?
Right, so the mind, the questioning going, what's going on here? Is this candid camera? And I said, no, sir, I do not. And he says, it's National Safety Week.
Oh, God.
And I said, in my head, really, intuition? He says, as a matter of fact, because it's National Safety Week, we're going to give you I'm giving you a $75 ticket for jaywalking. And I said, okay, thank you. From the police officer. I didn't do that.
You didn't kiss him?
No. Don't you see the little kissy mark on his face? So I take my ticket and I'm like this.
Your anger, your embarrassment,
it's
your
all
mind,
traveling with me.
The questioner, like, what?
Right.
Just happened?
Right. And so I'm like, there's a little ticket.
And then the mind's going, thanks a lot, intuition.
Right. So now the fight begins internally with,
There they are.
Are you blankety blank kidding me? I just got a $75 jaywalking ticket
For you?
for the intuition and the guidance. Well, once all the anger and the emotion settled, so all of this goes away, and then I can sit in my quiet center part
With the
with
bill.
my ticket.
Just put it over here.
Here too. We'll just put it right here.
No, she doesn't like that. So he's out. He's out of the picture. Okay.
So when I got quiet and sat, what I understood was, had I gone the normal route and listened to my mind, there was likely to be an incident that would have put me at jeopardy, and my safety would have been at risk. And it wouldn't have been uncommon, I found out later, that the area that I was in, although not typically unsafe, can have some muggings or holdups.
Predators.
Occur.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's when I moved out of judgment and critical thinking about the whole process, and really felt a lot of deep gratitude for the fact that
Thank you.
something...
Thank you, intuition.
Yeah. Right. Right. Oh, really? Okay, I like you now. Can I sit in your lap? Where I began to understand that this is really a valuable part of me, that if I say no to it, can have consequences that I may not want to encounter. Mm-hmm. Because this is always working into my best interest. This wants to and tries very hard.
Right.
It doesn't always help us with the best decisions.
Right.
And this is a fail-safe.
So when we're in a feeling place, our mind doesn't, is really around controlling and managing things.
There you go.
But when we're in an intuitive place, even though it doesn't make sense, even though our perception of what's happening is confusing, this is a place of trust. This
Absolutely.
is a place of safety. This will give us direction no matter what.
No matter, yeah, exactly.
And when we are in a place of intuition, we can really relax because we know it's got our back. One of our conversations around safety is we don't feel safe because we feel like we could get taken advantage of. Somebody could really put us down, make us small, all of that. We give our power away.
Yeah, we're trained to do that from very early on.
To be obedient to whoever's in charge of us.
Right.
But when
instead
we
of our
move-
own intuition, being obedient to our intuition, be obedient to what's outside of us, what people are telling us.
And our mind has been trained by others, by society, by belief systems. But our intuition is timeless. It's dependable. And one of the things that are great is it's consistent.
Yes.
It's consistent when we listen to it.
Absolutely. It's never failed me.
So let's wrap up. We talked about the perception, and perception is not always dependable.
And it doesn't know our best interest.
Right. And the second point was that the mind versus the Buddha nature. We're going to trust the Buddha nature, but even understanding the conversations. Like in my work, when we talk about the internal family systems and our parts, these are two parts. And understanding the conversations that we have inside of us is really vital to making good decisions, and understanding that the questioner is only doing their job. It's not meant to drive us crazy. It's meant to say, this doesn't make sense. I'm not in control.
Yeah.
And then the trust with the intuition comes through.
Yeah, and your inner family system work is phenomenal. I've experienced it. And one of the enormous benefits that I get from it is really around the awareness that occurs from a session. And when I have the awareness, then I can relax.
Yes.
And then when I feel that I'm relaxed, then I can feel peaceful.
And then the intuition, this relationship happens even greater.
Right. And the internal strife that is resolved in one of your sessions is invaluable. You know what? I'm finding there's enough strife in the world
Tell me.
outside of us that it's really important for me to eliminate the inner strife, because I'm going to still have to deal with the outer strife. So it's like taking half of the equation off the table, so to speak.
Yes.
And that's what your inner family systems does, that I think is phenomenal.
Thank you. I'm spending my life doing this work. So I totally believe in it. I trust in it. It's made a huge difference for me. The way we stress from life itself isn't necessarily the things that we're pointing to.
No.
It's the way we react to them.
Yeah.
So the way we react to life and its stressors is in our control.
Absolutely.
And not usually the word control, but it's in our ability to work with. I can't manage life. I can't manage the country. I can't manage the economic situation, the political situation. Can't manage any of that, but I can manage my reaction to it by understanding my parts.
Right. And another quick point to that is what I have found, and the brain science backs your work. The brain has developed over time and has several components, one of which is very reactive. It's the fight or flight part of us. Saber-toothed tiger, get out of the way, right? Well, time has gone on and other parts of our brain have developed. And that's where you move people out of that lower reactive fight or flight, unconscious, driving my behaviors day in and day out that I'm not even aware of, and the impact that it's creating chaos for me that I'm having so a lot of some of the chaos is ended from our sessions.
The internal chaos that keeps repeating from traumas and events earlier on.
Right. And so then what I found in working with you is once I move out of reactive, then I'm able to better respond. And reacting and responding are two very different ways to approach life. And so that's why I find your work so valuable.
Thank you, Tonya.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So let's have a closing treatment. Understanding that cooperation, meaning us and the divine, are operating together. And when our ego, where's our ego?
Oh, ego.
When our ego can step out of the way, then our mind will be able to work with our intuition, all of which are created within the consciousness.
Right.
But when we can line them up and work with them together, we become one with that which is greater, and operate together in a cohesive, trusting, beautiful way. So feeling grateful for your presence and your contribution, and watching you and your intuition win successful things day in and day out. Thank you for joining us on the way of the spiritual path, understanding the way of intuition and how it works on our path. Please join us again, the way of the spiritual path on the Lighter Side Network. Thank you.